Volume 1, Chapter 11. Woomph. As soon as I got back home, I laid on my bed and raised the bloody sword to look at it more carefully. It was called a sword, but it was only about 50 centimeters long. Compared to a long sword, you had the ability to put more force into an attack and make faster consecutive stabs as well. The low damage it inflicts is easily balanced out by its blood-drinking feature. With just this weapon, it would be easy to clear a level 1 dungeon. No sweat. And armor would have been nice, but that was impossible with the money I had left. Then I got up from the bed and opened the drawer under the desk. Inside was the level 0 skill book. Level 2 sword and a level 0 skill. This should be plenty to become a hunter. Luckily, I didn't sell it. Flip. I flipped a page of the skill book, the page that had the word effort on it. The next page was filled with a bunch of words I couldn't make out. What the hell? Skill books are supposed to have pictures and words that are easy to decipher or draw meanings from. What the hell was this? I know I've never seen a skill book with my own eyes before, but this was a well-known fact by everyone. Weird. So weird. But I didn't stop. I kept reading, or trying to at least. Half of me thought there was something wrong with this, and the other half kept expecting it to reveal something super awesome at some point. I decided to believe in the latter. Why not, right? Pot. A blinding light exploded out of the skill book. As soon as the light appeared, all the numbers and words I couldn't decipher seemed to just pop right into my head. My hunches rarely proved to be wrong. And I was now sure. This was the shit. Ha! When I opened my eyes, it was already night. I rubbed them as I sat up. What had happened? When I looked at the clock, I saw that 6 hours had passed, and I was hungry as hell. I shuffled my way to the fridge, opened the door, and quickly gulped down some milk by the carton. And spit it out immediately. Did it expire? The expiration date should still be about 2 days from now. I checked the date stamped on the carton, and indeed the date had not yet passed. No, even if the expiration date came, most milks didn't sour for a while still. I realized something was weird, so I started examining everything else in the fridge. Everything looked like it had gone to shit. Moldy food, wilted vegetables, and the bananas that were yellow just yesterday were all brown. I hurriedly grabbed my phone, but the battery was dead. I ran to check what the date was on the internet. The computer screen was telling me it was May 18th. I was sure today was May 8th. 10 days passed. Wait. What the heck? Something was really wrong here. How can a person live after not drinking a sip of water for 10 whole days? There's no freaking way. Yeah, true, I have never experienced a hunger like this before in my life, but not enough that I feel I'm about to die. First things first, I plugged my phone in to charge it back up. As soon as it turned back on, I saw there were a million messages and missed calls. Wow! This was the first time I'd ever seen so many messages on my phone. The first messages were from Young-sua. I grabbed some things that looked still somewhat edible and started to stuff my face while going through them one by one. I was just texting to see if you got home okay. If you run into any problems, give me a call. Why aren't you responding? Did something happen? You're not ignoring me, right? Is it because you don't want to waste your data? Can you please at least answer me? Hey, isn't this too much? You could at least send a response. See if I ever contact you again. It's not because you were sleeping and didn't see this, right? Are you ignoring me? After this, it was all pretty much the same thing. At some point it got pretty ugly, but it still felt a little nice that someone was concerned about me. Kind of scary too. I'll just ignore. Most of the missed calls were also all Yunsua. There was a call from home, so I called back to let them know everything was okay. They rarely called, if ever anyway, so it seemed they weren't overly concerned that I didn't respond for a few days. There was also a missed call from my broker. Since he almost never contacts me unless it's about work, there was a high chance he was calling about a job. I called him. Ring. Oi. Sangmin. Hey. I got a missed call from you yesterday. I was just about to call you again. Do you have any interest in joining a general party? There's a porter position open. General party porter? I don't know about that. I didn't feel like doing it. Not only was it super dangerous, but the pay wasn't that great too. But more than that, I was determined to live a hunter life from now on. Hey. Can't do anything about it. These are the only openings there are these days. Who knows when they'll open the dungeons to leisure parties again. I don't know about being a porter, but I might think about it if there's a hunter position. What? You already saved up enough? Ah. Well, something like that. I came up on a weapon. And a skill too. What kind of skill? Ha ha, the skill isn't all that great. But the weapon's a level 2. Level 2? That should be at least a couple $100,000, did you? I bought it with the money I earned fair and square. Don't worry your little head and just find something for me. Well, I'm sure you know what you're doing. In any case, congrats. There's a 10-person party. If you join as a hunter-level porter, I'm sure you can earn some good money. 10-person party? Then the split wouldn't be worth it. It's your first time. Start slow. All right. Then I'll take it. I took a deep breath after hanging up the phone. It was sinking in that I was on my way to becoming a hunter, and it was making me anxious. Since it was a 10-person party, the pay would be on the small side, but like my broker said, it was my first time. It isn't bad for a start. The next thing I needed to do at this point was check the skill. Come on, baby. The feeling I had before passing out was gone now. Just what did it do? How am I supposed to do this? The problem was, I didn't know what the skill was or how to activate it. I guess since the name of it is effort, the common sense thing to do is to put an effort into doing something, right? I decided to try doing some push-ups. When I was at about 200, my arms began to shake. But I'm a porter. I underwent training to enable me to carry around 200 kilograms bags while running. I completed an even 500 and fell to the floor. Hook! Hook! Shit! Feel like I'm going to die. I guess this isn't it. In the end, I couldn't figure out how to activate this stupid skill, and the day of the party was drawing ever nearer. General hunters normally don't hunt in the city but on the outskirts. This is because it is easier to make appointments in those dungeons. Additionally, the admission fees were cheaper to encourage hunters to come. I was waiting in front of a restaurant in Kyeonkido. If you walk about 2 kilometers, then you can reach Bikunsa. The dungeon we were raiding was there. General parties had a different vibe from the rich kids party that I was used to. They generally had low-level armor and skills, and they weren't really too amazing at hunting. As people started arriving one by one, I gave them each my business card. I made some business cards especially for today. It simply said, Porter and Hunter John Sangmin across it. I wouldn't be working with the rich kids' leisure parties anymore, so I didn't need to have that silly pretty boy moniker writing on it. I heard about you from Broker Song. I'm Hyunjun. I am the party leader. A guy in his mid-20s opened his mouth after reading the card. He had short hair with a long scar or his cheek. Honestly, that type of scar is so common that it didn't really make much of an impression on me. Yes. We'll trust in you. Half of the people here were probably people who have never been on a raid before. Most of the decent skilled parties all know each other and already have arranged raids together. I knew before even coming here what kind of party I would be stuck with. Of the 10 people in my party, 3 were short-range attackers, 5 were long-range attackers, and the rest were cover measures. What I mean by cover measures are people who can use confusion magic like Mr. Young was able to do. One person could do slip and the other one could use stunning. Both skills required a long time to activate, so they could only use it once on a hunt. But you can't take that for granted, because the one time you do use it could be the difference between a successful hunt and a failure. That is why there is always at least one of these in a party. Everyone finally arrived, so we began heading toward the dungeon. So does that mean you are a hunter with porter experience? The mid-40s looking man asked. I don't know if it was because of his fat face, but he had a permanent grumpy look. My name is John Sang-min. And you are? Ah. I should at least introduce myself first. He then passed me his business card between his index and middle finger. When I checked it, I saw that he was the manager of the W Company. The W Company was one of Korea's leading businesses. When he saw the shocked look on my face, he started laughing before giving me a different business card. Ah. I am so sorry. That was an old card I used to use. Ha ha. He patted my shoulder, still laughing. He was acting as if I was his underling right now. Well, whatever. It's not like I've never felt this before. As I started thinking back, I thought I could remember having been in the same party as him once or twice before. He probably retired recently and started living this life as a hunter because he had nothing else better to do. If he had experience in raids and was a director at a big company like that, then there was a good chance that he was a decent hunter. And in these instances, their skill levels were usually high too. He could definitely be useful. I expected him to be at least at Mr. Young's level. We'll see. Volume 1, Chapter 12. Clap. Now, you all probably already know the basic rules. Distribution of the haul will be according to everyone's contribution. And I will be the judge on that. We will also be paying Mr. John Sang-min a separate additional fee of $100 for acting as our group's porter. If an item is dropped sometime during the raid, we will auction or sell it at the hunter market and share the earnings. As he said, determining each individual's contribution was completely at the party head's, Mr. Hyunjun's, discretion. Of course, if there is a ridiculous ruling of contributions, then everyone would complain, so it is normal for there to be some kind of input from the entire party as to how it should be divided. What happens if an irregular appears? A girl hunter with short hair raised her hand. She wore glasses and was an archer, but her bow was a level 1 standard weapon. It was a no-name brand generic bow, so I didn't think we could depend on it too much. An irregular was a term for a monster that appears outside of its normal dungeon level, like if a level 2 or level 3 monster appears at a level 1 dungeon. Another instance of an irregular is when a boss appears in a dungeon that does not normally have a boss. Then, I guess you'd have to run for your life or die. Don't worry too much. After that day, there wasn't another incident for over a month. The glasses girl nodded her head at Hyunjun's words. But I could see she was still scared. I pegged her as a beginner by habit. I'm not always right, but doing this and being cautious could be the difference between life and death. Bikunsa Dungeon was far from civilization. And since the last irregular incident, the lack of hunters had led to a 30% discount off the usual admission price. It ended up being an almost $2,000 discount, so really, it was great for us. Tap. As soon as I stepped into the dungeon, I looked around to get a grasp of the place. The monsters may change after every reset, but the actual dungeon always remains the same. In the last 6 years' worth of data that I had stored on dungeons, I, of course, had the deets on this Bikunsa one. The mental map of the place was in my head. If you walked just 30 meters inside from the entrance, it went a bit downhill. And if you went a bit further down, you would come at a crossroads and meet your first monster. There would usually be about 3 to 4 monsters there, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem for our 10-person party. Well, I thought it would be easy, but a problem I didn't expect arose. Ahem, why isn't this working? The W company manager kept moving his hand around in the air while clearing his throat uncomfortably. What the hell? This is the man who didn't even have any items on him but came here with his one sleep skill. And he already messed up on activating it twice already. Every time he messed up, it took at least 5 minutes to try again, so basically we were standing around like idiots for 10 minutes. Then finally Hyunjun said, "What is your skill mastery?" 69%. Level 2 sleep. The manager responded with a slightly reddened face. If you're at that level, then shouldn't a level 1 monster be easy for you to hold? Yes, so. This is all just bad luck really. Next time I'll do it right, so don't worry. For every skill, it is measured by the level and proficiency. Proficiency starts at 0%, and the higher the percentage, the higher the success rate of that skill. Well, proficiency usually dictates just the success rate, but there are some skills that come with an added bonus feature too. These are called layer skills and are expensive. Very expensive. The problem was that you could never know someone else's skill capacity except your own. Of course, there is a separate skill that allows you to be able to gauge another person's skill. But it's rare to find a person willing to use up their one and only skill slot for this type of skill. But then there are some raid teams who specially keep a spot on their group for a person with such a skill. Corporate raid teams, or pro raiding teams, usually do this. Alright, Hyunjun said unconvincingly. Finally, on his third damn try, it worked. 5 small cave wolves. These were level 1 monsters that were pretty common in dungeons, but they were huge, about 1 meter in height. Their usual attack method was biting. They usually roam around in packs of 5 as they were now, so if there was no one to do a cover, then they would be hard to deal with. Of the 5 wolves, 3 fell asleep and 2 shook their heads, struggling to stay awake. The higher the skill, the higher the success rate, and these 2 obviously were successful in resisting it. He had said he was a level 2 sleep, but it was now obvious he was lying. I'll attack first. Hyunjun held a shield in one hand and a mace in the other. Due to its versatility, tanker-type hunters preferred blunt instruments to swords. Wah! Hyunjun yelled out as he raced toward the monsters. He was doing this to get the attention of the wolves still awake. He raised the shield in front of him and had the mace raised high above his head. And I counted to 10 quietly before running after him. At the same time, Hyunjun yelled out, "Short-range attack. Let's move in." Bam! Hyunjun smacked away the wolf running toward him with his shield and swung his mace toward the second wolf. In the time it took him to attack the 2 monsters, I pulled out my bloody sword to finish them off. Another hunter who had a motorcycle full-face helmet on, a longsword, and a bizarre outfit on it caught up next to Hyun. It seemed their movements had been planned ahead of time. When I tried to kill the wolf from behind, I saw Glass's girl pull her bow from far away. I knew she would do this. Doesn't she know what a short-range move is? Ping! Pat! The arrow hit the ground right in front of my foot and kicked up dust everywhere. Luckily, I noticed her and moved, or else it would have hit me right in the leg. I glared at her and shook my hand. It was a sign for her to stop what she was doing. If there were a bunch of us in one spot like this in a fight, it was common sense to abstain from long-range attacks unless the weapon had the option of not hurting humans. There is no way she didn't know something as simple as that. She was probably anxious and did it without thinking it through. The two wolves were growling at Hyunjun and Helmet Guy. Luckily, they were both wearing neck protectors so they wouldn't die that easily. I headed toward them quietly and carefully. Though they didn't turn to look at or acknowledge me, I was sure they knew where I was from my footsteps and smell. I don't have any stealth skills, so there was no way I would be able to get to them without them noticing. But there was a good reason why I was still doing this even after knowing all of that. Ha! Ta! As soon as I gave the signal, Hyunjun and Helmet Guy made aggressive noises and movements. Both wolves backed up in surprise in opposite directions, and I was standing right where one of them moved to. There was no way it could avoid me at that point. I stabbed at it with my bloody sword before it could retreat away from me. Stab! The wolf seemed to twist in the air before it opened its jaw toward me right when I tried to stab it. The cave wolf's sharp teeth caught the light from the torches and seemed to shine ominously. I hurriedly drew back the sword and swiped it to the side. Drops of blood spattered in the air as I felt a resistance, much like swiping at the bark of a tree bark, on the end of my fingertips. Not yet! I yelled out as I turned my head to where the wolf had landed. Its large jaws were aiming right for my neck as it ran in my direction. I rolled my shoulders as I readied my sword again. Jab! This time I got it for sure. I confirmed that the sword's tip had hit the wolf right on its jaw and pushed it in with all my strength. Shaying! Seconds after, as it soaked up the wolf's blood, the blade of the bloody sword turned a bright red color. The downed wolf was trying to move its head even still, so I aimed one more time. Pull out! I suddenly heard Hyunjun yelling out. I stopped mid-jab and I saw a bunch of arrows shooting in that direction. Whip, whip, whip. 3 bows hit their mark. One landed in front of my foot and the last bow hit the ceiling. I don't know who that was, but the asshole needs to learn how to shoot an arrow all the way back from the basics. It hit! Someone yelled out. The wolf that had been hit by the 3 arrows fell down in a bloody heap. The second wolf had its head smashed in by Hyunjun's mace and died shortly after. The only ones left were the 3 wolves that were still asleep. As Hyunjun readied his mace to kill the rest, I raised my hand up and said, Party head. Let me do it. Volume 1, Chapter 13. Though Hyunjun's weapon was indeed strong, it would not be enough to kill a cave wolf in one hit. But the bloody sword I had in my hand was getting stronger with the blood it had soaked up earlier. It could easily kill the level 1 monster with one swing. When I raised up the sword, red with blood, he glanced at it briefly before nodding his head. I walked up to the nearest wolf and stabbed into its neck. Wing! AR! I pushed back at the monster, trying to move away, and twisted my sword. I heard a squishing sound as blood started gushing out in torrents. Soon after, I could feel the life disappearing at the tip of my fingers. Plus 100. A green number appeared above the head of the now dead wolf before it winked out again. What the hell? I went to the second wolf and sliced its neck too. The same number appeared and disappeared again. And it happened a third time after I killed the third wolf. What appeared after killing all 5 wolves were 2 monocytes and 1 coltan. When you refined a coltan, it became tantalum, something used to make a smartphone battery. This was the reason for the expensive new phones. And this was exactly why I keep my old 2G phone. Why do I need something that was double the cost of what I have now? Ms. Bai Young. Did you not hear my instructions? Hyunjun walked towards Glasses Girl and asked. Honestly, it could have been a fatal mistake. If I hadn't been aware of my surroundings and noticed her, I could have ended up wounded or dead before the real hunt had even begun. I'm sorry. It's not a problem if you aren't skilled or have expertise. There is always someone like that in any party. This is why even if you cannot join in the hunt or kill, we still give everyone a share of the earnings. So please abstain from overstepping what you are able to do. And you shouldn't be apologizing to me but to that gentleman. As Hyunjun pointed to me, Glasses Girl walked up to me and bowed. She really did look terribly sorry. I'm really sorry. I was so anxious I forgot his instructions. I thought that I needed to help in some way and made a terrible error in judgment. Anyone can make a mistake. Let's just forget about it. Glasses Girl opened her eyes wide and said, you're not mad? Just try to do better from now on. I guess. If you don't have anything else to say, you can stand back up. You don't have to keep bowing. Since she was bowed to me, I could see that she was at least a D cup inside her armor. Wow! And she has glasses too. This could quite possibly be the worst combinations for an archer. If I were completely honest, I wasn't really that mad. I had already anticipated something like this to happen and it resulted in nothing bad anyway. On top of that, it's not like getting mad is going to improve her skill in any way, so what was the point? There was no reason for me to overreact over someone else's mistake. Hyunjun stared at me strangely. I don't like getting that kind of look from a guy. Bleh. Then should we continue? Anyway, what was the meaning of those numbers? I recalled the green digits as I packed the oars into the backpack and continued on our raid with the party. It was obvious it had something to do with the effort skill. I'm not an idiot. That's not what I meant. What I was wondering was what those numbers signified. Okay, let's think this through. When we killed the first wolf, a number didn't show up. Same thing with the second one. The number only started appearing after killing the third wolf. The only difference was that I had personally killed the third, fourth, and fifth wolf. Maybe I earned something for killing a monster. That's awesome. But what's the reward? What can I do with that number? If you want to know your own skill level and proficiency, it's a fairly easy thing to find out. You close your right eye and try to use your skill. If you do that, 2 numbers will appear where it was dark moments before, your level, and your proficiency. If you have a passive skill, all you have to do is just close your right eye. Because a passive skill is always active. But my case was different. In the past few days, I haven't been able to see any number at all. This time I said, what the hell, and tried closing my left eye. 0, 1, 300 appeared. That would probably be level, proficiency, reward, in that order. This was so weird. All this time I had to close my left eye? Hello? Glasses Girl tapped my shoulder. When I didn't answer, she shook me a bit. Why, Wink, you were winking. I was trying to find out my skill level. That was what I figured. Yes. It's true. Well, I didn't say it wasn't. Right. Glasses girl kept answering me with this nonsense before she fell forward suddenly. What's with tripping over your own foot? We paused for a bit to let her get back up before we continued on. There were traps that would appear at times, so we had to move cautiously. Detection skills were always useful to have, but there is rarely anyone who would learn a skill that didn't help, particularly in a fight. I kept looking around with my eyes while my mind continued to race in thought. How am I supposed to use those reward points? Was it like money? Can I use this to raise my skill or strength? Or could they just be meaningless numbers to make me feel good about myself? Well, I guess at this point anything could be possible. Squeeze. Just when we were exiting one tunnel, Hyunjun raised his hand over his head and made a fist. I walked up next to him and quietly looked in the direction he was pointing at with his chin. 8 cave wolves and 1 goblin. Though we were 10 in our party, if I were to honestly assess our skill, we were way weaker than them. In cases such as this, we couldn't do anything but take the risk. Isn't it better to pass? The manager mouthed silently. He had a worried expression on his face. It was obvious he was worried his lacking sleep skill wouldn't work properly this time around either. Hyunjun thought for a second before shaking his head. If we pass here, we have to pass on this entire tunnel. That means over half our earnings would go up in smoke. What if we get hurt? There is no such thing as a safe dungeon. Hyunjun replied in a short tone. The manager, who was used to hunting in leisure parties, wasn't used to being put in any unnecessary danger. But that was too bad. Because this was a general party. Tough luck, guy. In the large area, 8 cave wolves were slinking around. And in the center, the goblin was sleeping in the torchlight. Sleep would work even more easily on a fella that is already sleeping. I figured it would only be a doable fight if at least 5 monsters, including the goblin, were to be ensnared in the sleep skill. If there are this many, the sleep doesn't work as well. The manager kept muttering about as he walked forward. He crouched behind a boulder that was not in the wolf's view and raised his hand. A golden light shined out from his palm and settled down over the enemy like a fog. The goblin and 3 wolves fell into a deep sleep. There were now 5 wolves to deal with. But that was just too much for us. Hyunjun's face went dark. I don't know about this. The sleep was successful, but it seemed it wasn't too effective because the wolves were starting to stir. I tapped his shoulder and said, "How about we distract them and take at least one of them out first with a bow? You think that'll work?" We won't know until we try. If we kill at least one in the beginning, I'm sure we can take care of the rest one way or another. I guess if it's for then it'll still be hard, but not impossible. But what can we use as a distraction? I have beef jerky that I packed as an emergency snack. I pulled a couple out from my backpack and showed it to Hyunjun, who nodded his head. I took the jerky and threw it to the nearest world. Sniff, sniff. It looked at the jerky and started smelling it. It seemed to be suspicious at first, but it soon grabbed it with its forepaws and started ripping into it. While it was distracted, I threw some more toward it to lure it closer to where we were. It started patting its way closer and closer to us. Hyunjun made some hand gestures, the long-range attackers. All the long-range attackers in our party were archers. 2 crossbows and 3 regular bows. The damage for the crossbow was higher, but the speed of the regular bow was much quicker. The 2 crossbow attackers who had already preloaded their weapons walked to the wolf and shot their arrows. Pat! King! The cave wolf whimpered out as the bows pierced its body. It had hit its chin, so it wasn't a fatal shot. But because it was a crossbow, the wolf was having a difficult time trying to move its body. Even if it were to try to heal, it would take some time. ARR. The wolves who had heard the attack raised their heads and looked toward us. 3 bows were launched and flew where they were growling. Volume 1, Chapter 14. Snap! ARR. 2 more arrows flew into the air and 1 hit its mark. The wolves racing toward us were reduced to just 3. The one that had been hit in its shoulder lay on the ground whimpering. Ping! 1 more arrow flew out. When I turned back, I saw that while the 2 archers were reloading their weapon, Glasses Girl had quickly shot out an arrow. Did she abandon accuracy for speed? Right before they were on us, a 3-footed arrow flew out. Keying! 1 wolf was shot through the head and shoulder this time. 2 left. Come at me! Hyunjin yelled out while pounding his chest and jumping to the front. Helmet Guy pulled out his sword and went forward as well. I just stuck to Hyunjin's rear. I didn't have hunter-level armor, so I needed to be careful. I planned to make my move while Hyunjin had their attention. Keep your distance. Hyunjin yelled out this time. Understanding his meaning, Helmet and I immediately jumped next to him to flank both his sides. We stood about 3 steps apart from one another. This was the perfect distance for the archers to still make their attack, but not enough where the wolves could pass through us. The wolves jumped at Hyunjin before being knocked back by his shield. It seemed that while one wolf was aiming for his neck, the other focused on aiming at his body. Hyunjin lowered into an almost crouch to minimize his exposure to their teeth. He covered his lower body with his shield and protected his upper body with his mace. The 2 crossbow wielders finished loading their weapons and let fly their arrows. The arrows had hit their mark. The 30 centimeters bolt had embedded themselves deeply into the monsters. They began to throw up blood as they tried to retreat, but got caught in the 3 wolves that had been hit before. One of them jumped up to bite Hyunjin's shoulder, and the other chomped down on his leg, while still the 3rd wolf ran to bit at his head. Mr. Helmet Guy yelled out as he slashed out with his sword. A white glow emerged from the sword. It seemed he had activated a skill. I pulled out my bloody sword to swipe at the wolf on his shoulder. I could hear the sound as my sword stabbed into one wolf's butt. And the second sound was Helmet Guy cutting into another wolf's waist. The wolves cried out and let go of Mr. Now that he was free to move, he slammed down at the 3rd wolf's head with his shield. The wolf snarled out as he let go as well. Hyunjin yelled out once again. Stun! A hunter in training gear who had been standing back with the archers stomped heavily with his feet. The ground began to shake loudly and a shockwave shook the area where the wolves were. They collapsed where they stood and rolled around as the ground kept shaking uncontrollably. One wolf tumbled in my direction. I used all my strength to stab down at the wolf and twisted my sword. I could see the wound appear immediately and the blood spewing out soon after. As the wolf tried to struggle, I stomped down on its head and yelled, "Stay still, you bastard!" Its insides spilled out with the blood this time. Plus 100. As soon as I saw the green digits appear again, I headed towards my next objective. The stun time was a total of 10 seconds. My bloody sword was still only half red. It needed more blood. I didn't hesitate as I sliced through the second wolf's neck. Another sprout of blood, and then I heard the screaming of a goblin behind me. Kaya! The sleep had completely come undone. This goblin had the special ability of being able to command the wolves. Wolves who are under the goblin's command do not feel fear or dread death. This made them several hundred times harder to fight. I had killed 2 wolves and Helmet and Mr. Eum had killed 2 wolves. The last wolf was running toward In Hyunjun and Helmet was too far away to be of any help to me. Now the 3 sleeping wolves had awoken and dashed towards me. Shit. What the hell? Their lengths were almost as long as I was tall, and seeing them running at me made me almost want to shit my pants. Ping! Some arrow flew out and barely missed me. Thought the arrows kept flying at them, they never hesitated or slowed down. Should I run? For some reason, I felt like I could do something. Run! You crazy man! I jumped out of the way after hearing the manager shouting. The wolf bit at the air. Why is this psycho jumping in this direction? I could see the manager. I had instinctively jumped where I heard the voice. I landed behind the boulder he was hiding at. The wolves padded toward us while growling menacingly. Each of the 3 wolves were as big as I was. Strength, speed, reflexes, they were all better than mine. There was no hope. Just then a shower of arrows landed where the wolves stood. One wolf evaded the arrows and headed towards the archers. There was no time to think. I threw the bloody sword I had been holding. Well, what do you know? It landed right on the butt of one wolf. And right after, another flurry of arrows flew out, one of it piercing that wolf right in its eye. That's it. What do you mean that's it? How can you throw away your weapon like that? The manager yelled out in aggravation. The last 2 wolves again started running towards us. Helmet had finally arrived to help and bumped into the racing wolves. Are you okay? Shit. Why are you the one stealing all the glory and being cool? It wasn't over yet. But it would take too long for me to try and retrieve my bloody sword. I looked around to see if there was anything else I could use as a weapon. I looked at the boulder the manager had been hiding behind. It looked like it would weigh about 300 kilograms. I pushed the manager aside and grabbed onto the bottom part of the boulder. Oh! The boulder moved a bit, but that was it. Are you crazy? What the hell are you doing? The manager was looking like he might just flip any second now. I guess it was pretty crazy. But, I mean, it felt like it would work. Oh! I heard a weird sound coming from my back. Wait. Did I break something? And in that instant, I picked up the enormous boulder. Volume 1, Chapter 15. Huh. The manager looked at me incredulously. I yelled in Helmet Guy's direction as I threw the boulder. Duck! Whoosh! Helmet crouched down without even looking back. The boulder just barely passed over his head and landed on the 2 wolves in front of him. Crash! One wolf had its head crushed under the boulder while the other wolf had its crumpled under it. It was trapped. Wait! I will kill it! I yelled at Helmet Guy and ran to pick up my sword. As soon as I killed it, the familiar green number appeared. Opposite of us, I saw Eum Hyunjun killing the 3rd wolf. The only monster left now was the goblin. Quachi! Twack! What the hell is that thing saying now? The manager asked. He's probably asking us to spare his life. I held my sword and slowly approached it. In its hand was a short whip, hardly something you could call a weapon. Seeing that he was a wolf trainer, he looked less dangerous than the usual breed. As we started walking closer to it, it slowly began backing up before it finally was up against the cave wall. I will do it. You don't have to. If you're trying so hard because of the contribution thing, then you don't have to worry. You've done more than enough. I shook my head at Hyunjun's words. It's not because of the contribution. I want to do it before the buff on the sword disappears. Oh! The bloody sword easily pierced through the goblin's leathery hide and cut its inside. Plus 150. I guess they give a bit more for this guy. As we waited for the monster to disappear, everyone took a break. I also sat down to rest on top of my backpack and closed my left eye. 0, 2, 350. Hey, wait. Shouldn't it be 850? Why is there 500 less than there should be? Ah. That's right. It's obvious where it went. I stood up and picked up my heavy backpack with one hand. The 50 kilograms backpack felt very easy and light to pick up. So that's it. I was stronger. I'd have to experiment a bit later on to figure out just how much strength uses up how many points, but it feels like I'm at least 50% stronger. Was this a permanent buff or a temporary buff? I couldn't be sure. But if this was permanent, my heart began to race. This could be an even crazier skill than I could have ever hoped for. Isn't that heavy? I had been lost in thought before the glasses girl interrupted me. I pushed the bag toward her. Want to try holding it? No. I can tell just by looking at that thing that it's real heavy. Probably about 50 kilograms. Don't lie. That means it's heavier than me? A porter can measure a person's weight almost exactly just by looking. So, from Miss Bei Yongqiang's height and body, your muscle structure, I can tell you are not lighter than this backpack. You're probably around 50. Ah. Okay, stop. Glasses girl began waving her arms about to shut me up. Sure. I didn't want to embarrass her, so I closed my mouth. Glasses girl then took a deep breath and said, truthfully, there was something I wanted to ask you. Ask away. Do you know how to use a bow and arrow? Why would you think that? From the way you evaded the first arrow I shot out. No, you didn't even evade it. It was as if you knew that the arrow would land right there. It wasn't even as if the speed of the arrow was slow or anything. If you knew that much, then it would mean you've probably handled this type of weapon before. I learned a bit for fun in college. I knew it! I knew it! But why did you want to know? She hesitated for a moment before sighing again and asking. Well, I've never had any proper training on how to use a bow before. So even though I practice a lot, I never really seem to improve. If that's the case, then it would be better for you to ask the other archers. I already asked them, but they all said they learned it from purchasing a skill. Then there's nothing you can do. Purchasing a skill meant you automatically absorbed the ability to do something without ever really training your body to learn the actual task/skill. So there was no way they could teach someone else. It would be like a person trying to teach someone else how to breathe. It comes so naturally. How would you explain it probably into words? Glasses girl stared at me with wide and hopeful eyes. There was one advice I could give. Shoot slowly. What? Because you keep trying to shoot quickly even when your skill isn't up to par, your accuracy never improves. Just think of it as having only one shot in a hunt and shoot with care, slowly. But Do you remember what the party head said? Yes. Don't think of the contribution. Glasses girl had a very sad look on her face. She wasn't able to shoot very well at all today. She probably shot out about 10 arrows but missed almost every time. This could only be a psychological problem. Because your accuracy is so low, you're too afraid of failing again and you end up hurting your performance. I see. Glasses girl nodded her head. It is common for a person experiencing an issue to not realize the remedy, even though it may be staring them in the face, until pointed out by an outsider. This was such a case. Thank you for the advice. I'll buy you food later. It's fine. You don't want to eat food I buy you? How many people you think are on this earth you can say no in this kind of situation? I reluctantly agreed to let her buy me food. Glasses girl made a little hurrah with her fist, bowed quickly, and walked away. What does she see in the crazy bastard? Lord knows. The manager started muttering to himself. I shrugged my shoulders. Whatever. Good job, everyone. As soon as we cleared the dungeon, the sunlight began streaming into the cave. The increase in strength was still there. It was still early because we didn't leave the dungeon yet, but it's been active for nearly 3 hours, very encouraging. After calculating everything, today's entire earnings were only $20,000. There was an area you could option off the ores as soon as you left the dungeon so we could do the splits immediately. But that wasn't all I got out of today. I also got some more of those reward points. I pretty much tried to rack them up every chance I got. 1,350 points. I was planning to do some tests with this. There was no way that the effort skill would be limited to just strength. If that was the case, the skill would have been called Power Up, or Strength Up, or whatever. After we all took a bit of a break, we went to do the contribution split. As expected, the one who got the most was Hyunjun. The one who came in second was the manager guy. Wait. Mr. Kim Sunjian got second? Someone asked. He was one of the crossbow guys who really came in handy that day. I didn't disagree with what he was asking. The contributions should be split based on results and not just the level of someone's skill. Do you disagree? Well, he messed up on the sleep magic a bunch of times and all he did was hide and complain during the actual fight. What? When did I ever complain? Manager man stood up from his seat, super red in the face. He looked like he was just about ready to strangle someone. Hyunjun placated the angry man and had him take a seat before speaking carefully. That is true. I cannot disagree. But it is also true that his sleep magic was the most helpful during our raid. If it weren't for him today, we wouldn't have been able to clear over half of the dungeon today. But it's still hard for us to acknowledge him as number 2. I would much prefer it if we named this man as number 2 for today. He pointed to me as he spoke. I don't mind. Though the manager was a bit rough around the edges, he was quite helpful in today's raid. I shook my hand as I responded to the indirect compliment. I did understand where Hyunjun was coming from, but mainly I wanted to support him. As soon as I supported the manager as second, everyone else seemed to put away their reservations. The manager glanced my way for a second but whipped his head away when we locked eyes. Okay. Then, is there anyone else who objects to this order? No one else answered. I was placed third, Helmet Man got fourth, and as predicted, Glasses Girl got last place. Since those who were most at risk or put themselves in danger to complete the raid were usually ranked higher, it was normal for there to be more short-range or close combat attackers at the top. The manager was the exception. But this was also normal because those who knew how to do sleep or confusion magic were considered very valuable in a level 1 dungeon. So there you have it.